Hello and welcome to the Plant Paradigm Podcast, where we have inspiring conversations with amazing people from all around the world and look for ways to create a clean, green, and sustainable future for us, the planet, and all beings. I'm your host, Tom Simak, a fellow plant eater who strives to optimize every living ecosystem, passionate about looking after this beautiful floating rock we call home and all the lovely creatures that dwell among it. Today's guest you've most likely heard of. We're talking to none other than the amazing Dr. Michael Klaper. Before we get into the heart of our conversation, just a friendly reminder that all the episodes are actually uploaded onto YouTube and of course onto Instagram, where we'll post snippets of our favorite parts. On Instagram, we post a whole heap of different things, including healthy meals, new science, tips and tricks, and what I found has helped me become the best version of myself. Okay, back to our guest today. Famous for his advocacy in the vegan scene through his part in documentaries such as What the Health, Cowspiracy, Diet for a New America, and his book, Vegan Nutrition, Pure and Simple. Klaper's research and presence is in different forms, whether that's videos, podcasts, or keynotes, and they have all cumulatively inspired thousands of people to rethink health and lean towards a plant-centric diet for longevity. Dr. Klaper is super passionate about the world of plants and all the amazing benefits that they can bring to us. Through food, he aims to really treat the illness and not just band-aid the symptoms. Having digested a plethora of his research and speeches over the years, I was really excited to have this conversation and take a deep dive into the science and evidence that's really made strides in the plant-based movement and look at what this all means in 2021 and beyond. And that's exactly what we'll cover. This will be quite a sciencey episode, but then I'm going to do my best to get him to lay it all out in layman's term for people like me who need that digestible content to then apply that into our lives so that we can have the best possible health outcomes. We'll also be talking a lot about fasting, since that's a very big part of his expertise. So for those who are interested in that topic, I really think that you'll gain a lot from this conversation. With all that being said, I hope you enjoy this episode and I will see you on the other side. Dr. Michael Klaper, welcome to the Plant Paradigm Podcast. How are you going today?
Oh, excellent. Really good to be with you and your listeners. Thanks for the invitation.
Absolute pleasure. What's been keeping you busy these last few months?
What's been keeping me busy?
Yeah.
Oh, my. My life. If I ever catch the guy who just put 24 hours in a day, I'm going to give him a piece of my mind. I'm always about 3 hours short every day. Outside of having an active telemedicine practice where I see patients clinically, my real passion is our Moving Medicine Forward initiative, where I'm trying to reach the medical students while they're still in school before pharmacosclerosis sets in their brain and they learn that drugs and surgery are the only treatment for patients. I want to tell them it's the food your patients are eating. That's why they're sitting in front of you, overweight, hypertensive, diabetic, clogged up and inflamed. And if you get them on a plant-based diet, these diseases reverse. I wish somebody had told me that when I was a first-year medical student. It would have changed the entire course of my medical career. And so I'm through our initiative, we're delivering that message to medical students around the world. I was in Melbourne a couple of years ago. I gave a couple of talks there, but in Sydney and in Adelaide as well. But I was in Auckland, New Zealand. I've been in Europe, Canada, across the US, trying to get this information out. We need to transform Western medicine so the patient diet is occupying the premier position about the cause and the cure of these diseases. So between practicing medicine and trying to wake up my colleagues by reaching the students, that takes up about 28 hours a day.
I love that. I mean, when you're looking at, we put a lot of trust in our doctors, especially with the recommendations they make. And I understand where you're coming from. It's absolutely vital. What struggles do you come across? Like, is it well received that we should be looking at the food and not just the pharmacology?
Oh, it's anathema. Oh, the doctors don't want to hear this. The doctors don't want to hear this. We are totally ignorant of nutrition. We go through 4 years of medical school. Nutrition is, on the whole, not even mentioned. We practice medicine like what our patients are eating has no effect on these diseases they're bringing to us, when the truth is what they're running through their system every 4 hours is the major reason they're sitting in front of us with disease X, whether it's obesity, diabetes, clogged arteries, high blood pressure, autoimmune disease. It's the food. In fact, I have a plaque. I took it off my office in the last August. It's the food. And it's been the food all along, as far as the years of chronic disease. And yet we're not schooled in it. We're ignorant of it. Nutrition is not respected it's a sissy science. It's not surgery. It's not cardiology. Nutrition, send them to the dietitian. She'll give them a diet. When really it's the major cause of the disease and the potential cure. And finally, the doctors are eating the same stuff themselves. In the hospital cafeteria, they're eating the burgers and the pizzas. And in the restaurants, they're ordering the steak and the lobster. So they're not going to tell their patients don't eat it. And then you get that awful spectacle of a doctor walking in the exam room with a big pot belly and a pocket full of statins and beta blockers from his own disease. That's no example to set if you want to heal a patient. So, And I have to be honest, of course, if we really focus on nutrition, it's going to change the whole economic paradigm of medicine, where now we get paid for doing something to people, cutting them or putting in stents and catheters, et cetera. Here we're just talking them to change their lifestyle and their eating habits. And so that threatens the doctors. Well, I won't be able to make any money if I'm not doing surgery, et cetera. So it's been a tough sell, but the truth is the truth. They say, well, let the truth be told of the heavens fall. And the truth is, it is the food. And it's such a tragedy because to not recognize it, because one, you're depriving the patient of a cheap, easy, delicious way to reverse their diabetes, their high blood pressure, their clogged arteries, et cetera. And you're depriving the doctor of the satisfaction of seeing their patients get healthy. Yeah, it's remarkable. You adopt a whole food, plant-based diet, and that patient who's overweight, high blood pressure, diabetic, clogged up, inflamed, within days of adopting a diet with lots of salads and soups and steamed veggies, the obesity starts to melt away. The arteries open up. The high blood pressure goes down. The joints stop hurting so much. The asthmatic lungs stop wheezing. The migraine headaches get better. The inflamed colon settles down. The diarrhea goes away. The psoriasis skin clears up. And they turn into normal, healthy people right before your eyes. And I tell the medical students, what greater gift could you want for your patients? What greater outcome? How rewarding it is. I'm the happiest doctor I know. My patients get healthy right before my eyes. And I tell the young student, don't you want to be the happiest doctor you know? Do you want to heal these patients or don't you? I mean, really, why are you going into medicine? Want to heal them? Then get real about what they're eating, because that's why they're sitting in front of you, doctor. And, that's the truth of it. But most doctors, most doctors, they don't want to hear it, but more and more do. And that's what gets me up in the morning. And now I go into the medical school classes, or I do it by Zoom now. And in all the first, second, third year medical school classes, there's always now 20, 30 students. They've seen movies like Forks Over Knives and What the Health and Cowspiracy. The light's on. They know food's important and plant-based nutrition has something going for it. So it's an easier sell. In fact, many of them, they invite me, and I don't barge in there. It's the students who already are a bit nutritionally awake who invite me in. By the way, if your listeners or your viewers would like to know what I'm telling the students, you're invited to go to my website, drklaper.com. I'm sure Tom
I'll leave it linked up, of course.
And click on my video called What I Wish I Learned in Medical School About Nutrition. And you'll see the lecture I give the students. It's in plain English. There's a little medicine, a little science involved, but not much. And you'll see the message we're delivering. And slowly, we're chipping away at the wall. And the more the medical students and young doctors we can wake up, every one of them in an active practice comes in contact with 2,000-3,000 patients. And so if you can change the doctors, you'll change medicine, you'll change society. So that's the focus, but it's been a tough slog at the coalface here. But there's nothing else to do at this point in my career, and so I'm enjoying. And some of the students I meet are so wonderful. It's so refreshing. They're so young and bright and motivated. So that's the arena that I'm working in, and it's a good fit.
I'm curious, like for everyday people like me, when we're talking about health and we have this, I guess, rudimentary understanding of and we get these objections like protein and animal all that kind of stuff. What objections do you come across when you're like a professor talking to another professor, or like professor to medical student? What kind of conversations are had?
Oh my, good question. Well, of course, because the ignorance of my profession is so profound, and I often wind up in a lecture or in a one-to-one interview apologizing for my profession and our abysmal ignorance of nutrition. It's really embarrassing that we don't know more about it. And so the objections I run into, one, are the very same that you mentioned. Where are you going to get your protein? And it's that they don't know that they're whole grains and beans, pulses, legumes, nuts, seeds. There's more than enough protein in a plant-based diet. I've never written protein deficiency as a diagnosis to any plant-based eater that I've seen. But then, because they're scientists and they're doctors, it's easy for them to retreat to the stance of, no matter what you say, well, show me the proof. Show me, I want 5 double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized studies proving that broccoli is healthier than candy bars. Show me those studies. And if you can't show me the studies, I don't want to, you're a flake. I don't want to talk to you. And of course, those studies, who's going to fund that big broccoli? Who's going to fund these studies? And now there are more and more studies showing the power of plant-based nutrition. But nutrition studies are difficult to do. If you're really going to be scientific and just minimize the variables, then you've got to take 1,000 people eating the exact same diet, but half of them eat 2 sprigs of broccoli every day, and half of them eat 2 candy bars every day, and follow them for 20 years and see who develops the heart attacks. Nobody's going to do that. Humans, we change what we eat. No one's got that discipline. And as I said, who's going to pay for that study? So the studies that they insist on, you don't find those kind in the medical literature. You'll find various nutrition studies, but then they drill down to the plant eaters had better blood pressure and better diabetes. Let's see what it was in the plant that might be the cause of the lower blood pressure. And they bring out their reductionist scalpel and carve it up, looking for that magic molecule that maybe we could take it out and put it into a pill and give it to patients so they can keep eating their cheeseburgers, but take the magic pill and they'll be healthy. Doesn't work like that. Health comes from healthy living. We're plant-eating hominids. That's who we are. We have basically the same digestive system that our gorilla and bonobo cousins have. And they're up in the trees eating leaves and fruit, passing these big soft stools every day, not complaining of constipation. Never had a gorilla in the office complaining of constipation. And we have basically the same bodies. We have fingers on our hands, not claws. We've got long intestines for digesting fiber, not short ones for flesh, like your house cat does. And the saliva in our mouths has an enzyme that digests starches, not protein. We're clearly plant-eating creatures. And I'm just saying, follow natural law. Eat a whole food plant-based diet, and the body gets healthy. It's not that hard a concept, you wouldn't think. But we Homo sapiens, we make things a lot more complex than they need to be, it seems. So, yeah, a lot of resistance with a scientific twist to it. But, no one is so blind as he who will not see. And a lot of them, they just don't want to see it because it shakes their whole foundation of medicine and their approach to. But again, the truth is the truth. And if you don't mind me just going a little further, it sorts out within the medical practice areas in a strange, sad way, in that all the specialists, so smart and dedicated and wonderful doctors all, the internist sees the high blood pressure, the cardiologist sees the clogged arteries, the physiatrist sees the sore joints, the endocrinologist sees the type 2 diabetes, the gastroenterologist sees the colitis, the general surgeon sees the diverticulitis, the neurologist sees the dementia. They're all looking at the same disease. You want to get on the soapbox. It's what your patients are eating. I would like to try to shake them. No, it's the food. Start with that. And most of these diseases get better, but we got a long way to go to that. But that's the predicament that we've gotten ourselves into, that now that a number of doctors are trying to unscramble. Finally, I'm very happy. You guys down in Australia, you've got a wonderful Australasian society of lifestyle medicine, and they're really pro plant-based. It's wonderful to see. And around the world, the PAN, the Physicians for Nutrition, the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, it's happening. Thousands of physicians around the world have the light goes on, and they're practicing plant-based lifestyle medicine. So I don't want you to think I'm the only voice in the wilderness here. It's a movement that's steadily gaining strength, and might be a doctor near each one of your listeners there who's already open to plant-based nutrition.
I'm going to follow that train of thought that you just brought up. Firstly, it was actually kind of sad and felt good that we kind of have the same conversations, average people, as like physicians and doctors, just you guys use probably bigger words. But like looking at like dietary recommendations that you just brought up, I know the dietary guidelines for the US actually just got updated recently. What's your thought on the changes that they've made and the direction that they're going?
Oh, it's glacial. It's slowly improving. The truth is the truth. But these guidelines, they were large, the intent may have been good, but it became subverted when big industry and big money moves in, and the meat guys want to make sure that there's meat at every meal. The dairy guys want to make sure there's dairy at every meal. And this gets incorporated in, not for nutritional reasons, not for health reasons, but to keep the money flowing. And that started in the 1920s and 30s and 40s, and it's just been locked in there up until recent years, where finally so much proof is coming out as far as you don't really need meat and dairy, and patients get better without it. That their fingers are slowly being pried off the controls of the nutrition guidelines. And we took great encouragement from the Canadians, bless them, when they just came out with their new guidelines, where they had the power plate, which we have here too, which came from a plant-based organization's idea, by the way, the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. But you have the grains and the legumes and the fruits and vegetables. And then there's the glass to drink. And in America, it's always been milk, dairy here. For the first, and the Canadian dairy producers are a powerful lobby. For the first time, the Canadians came out, dairy was not even in the glass there. It's
wow.
Water is the preferable drink. Dairy optional. I don't think they mentioned it there. How courageous of them that they're extricating themselves from the grasp of the dairy folks. That's a good sign for us in the States, and maybe you too as well. So slowly it's happening. They're recognizing that, you don't have to eat meat. Beans and pulses and legumes will give you the protein you need. And it's starting to creep into the food guidelines. So it's happening. It's just slowly, glacially, but it's happening.
I mean, when we're looking at lobbies and stuff like that, especially when it comes to like there's a lot of money involved, are like physicians such as yourself or people speaking up for plant-based diets. Are you worried at all of like the defamation power or money that the industries opposing you have?
I was back 20 years ago. I've been in the nutrition game, plant-based nutrition. I became vegan in 1981. And I worked, and in 1986, I joined forces with American author John Robbins, who wrote a book, Diet for New America. We founded an organization called EarthSafe, and really very intensively got the message out about animal products versus plant-based diets. And in those early years, I was concerned. I looked over my shoulder whether I'm being followed from some folks that might not have been happy with our message. As the decades have gone by, really it turned out nothing much has happened. I'm a small fry here, and they've got other things to worry about. And so far, I've not had any personal distress from any folks in the animal-based camp there. And as time goes on, the public is getting so pro-plant now. The public's on our side. They know because and people your age makes me feel so old to say this, but your generation is true. You have a consciousness, boy, I sure didn't have in my 30s, and you're aware not only of the plant issues, but the horrible animal suffering that's inherent in putting meat and dairy on the table, and the environmental costs, where your future, my future, and your kids' futures are intimately tied up with industrial agriculture, which is the main destructive force on the planet today. It's why they're cutting down the forest. It's where most of the water is going. It's why the soil is eroding, because of our insatiable appetite for meat and the huge amount that's being produced. And so the public, and their message is getting out thanks to people like you and broadcasts like this. And it's getting out into the zeitgeist, into the people's understandings of the bigger picture. So it's an easier sell on the public side, and my profession is slowly moving there. And the meat guys, they know the handwriting's on the wall. In the States here, Tyson Foods, the biggest poultry producer, is now developing their own plant-based chicken meat. They see it. They know that industry is going to fold, and the meat guys are making their own Impossible burgers, whatever. It's an archaic, and it's like whaling. We used to do it, and the whaler harpooner was our hero. Now we say, my God, you go out and put harpoons in the brains of whales. What are you doing, man? Well, the meat industry and the poultry, they're going to be looked upon in the same way, and it'll be something we used to do. And so we're in the cusp of ages, where we're closing one age and opening a better one. And so I'm hopeful, especially for folks of your generation and your kids as well. So the game's not lost by a long shot.
We'll make it happen. Look, behind you, I can see How Not to Die by Dr. Greger. I was wondering what books you recommend or that you really love throughout the ages.
Oh, my. There's been some wonderful ones lately. Yes, highly recommend How Not to Die by Dr. Greger. If you are a clinician, if you're a doctor, please go to the website of Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, PCRM.org. And they have a nutrition guide for clinician app, and download it onto your phone. And so when you're faced with a patient with lupus or rheumatoid arthritis, just punch in the diagnosis and boom, here's what they ought to be eating. So the app is really good. There's some wonderful books. If people go to my website, drklaper.com, and I've got my healthy eating guide. It's a 4-page handout, and on how to get through a day of healthy eating. And the last page is filled with references and suggestions for books and articles and websites to visit. And so there's wonderful starter kits. PCRM has one. The Plantrition Project have these little booklets, how to get started on plant-based nutrition. So if you're just starting, look for the starter kit or starter guide for plant-based nutrition. Just Google that. You'll see bunches of those. A wonderful book came out by a vegan dietitian and pediatrician. Dr. Reshma Shah is a pediatrician, and Brenda Davis, the dietitian, called Nourish, Nourish. And they did a beautiful job of how to feed a family through the life cycles. As far as how to do it properly plant-based. So get Nourish, check that one out. Check out the starter guides, the jump starts for Plant Nutrition Project and PCRM, all in many different languages. They have them now, Spanish and Mandarin, etc. That'll get you started. And awesome. Check out PCRM's nutrition guide.
Awesome. Now I want to dive deep into something I think you're really passionate about, and I've been doing a lot of research in recently, which is the whole field of fasting. Now, I find it very interesting because there's a lot of obviously conflicting data. And I think, in the space, I haven't been in here very long, but I think it's a relatively new thing that's come about and been talked about. So I read a paper you published in 2015 in regards to this 42-year-old woman that underwent a 21-day water fast, followed by what sounded like a whole foods plant-based diet, which actually reduced her enlarged lymph node. So that's really huge news. And I was wondering if you could explain the basics and what the premise is of water fasting and what it is about.
Yes. Well, if you don't mind me taking a long run up here through a couple million years here, a million years ago on the African savanna, our ancient foraging ancestors spent all day foraging. The main calories they got was not from mammoth meat. It was from roots and tubers that were dug up mostly by the women. But that's what our small mouths and grinding teeth are about. We're starch eaters. Well, you can imagine our traveling band of foragers there, just by the lay of the land and weather vagaries, that there might be 4 or 5 days go by when you don't find anything to eat, and you drank water if you were lucky. But these enforced water fasts for 4, 5, 6 days were probably the rule back then. And these intermittent fasting periods were just the way it was. And when the body is forced to do without calories, then it has to burn its own fat stores that it has already accumulated. And when it enters that state of metabolizing your own fat as opposed to taking in carbohydrates from the outside, remarkable things happen in the body. These molecules called ketones come in to the bloodstream, and they're the breakdown products of the fat that you're burning. And when there's ketones in the blood, they signal all the tissues in the body to enter a different state altogether. It's a state of conservation. The body doesn't want to waste energy, so it turns down inflammation in the body. Inflammatory reactions are wasteful of heat and energy, so inflammation turns down. Cancer growth also is dialed back. That's a waste of energy. The body rebalances itself as far as hormone levels go and inflammatory processes. And this is just a normal repair cycle that the body takes advantage of. It's not putting energy out digesting food, then it uses that energy to repair itself, to rebalance its immune system, hormones, etc. And that's just hardwired into us. That's what happens when we're in the fasting state. Well, for 8 years, I was on the staff of True North Health Center in Santa Rosa, California, and we would use therapeutic fasting to take advantage of these remarkable responses the body has to drinking water for a number of days. Blood pressures come down, diabetes gets easier to manage, inflammation cools off, sore joints get better. It's a remarkable state. So there's now a whole discipline of therapeutic water fasting, and we take advantage of these responses in the body. Now, that said, It's a stress on the body. And if you're going to be doing, if you're basically healthy and not on medications, anybody can do a 3, 4, 5 day water fast at home. The body you'll do fine. But if it's longer than that, if you are trying to exert a medical effect, lower high blood pressure, cool off inflamed joints, settle autoimmune disease down, then you ought to be in a place where there's medical supervision. At True North, this was we did professional water fast supervision. We drew blood on these people, checked their kidney function, checked their liver function, and if everything was okay and they weren't on medications that we couldn't stop at least, we had them start on a water-only fast. So sometimes we use vegetable broth as well. And we watch them like a hawk. We check them twice a day. The intern knocks on the door in the clinic. How are you doing? Any nausea, any headache, getting lightheaded? We watch these folks like a hawk. And if they start getting nauseated or lightheaded, we stop the fast. So this is not something to do in a cavalier manner. It needs to be done professionally. If you're doing it more than a 4 or 5 day fast, you should be supervised. And with that caveat, as I mentioned, it can be a very effective therapy to get improvements in these medical conditions. But as I tell the patients and the young interns who would rotate through there, the fast is wonderful, very powerful, etc. But what really matters is what you eat after the fast. Because if they do this wonderful fast, lower their blood pressure and their joints are cooled off, if they go out then and eat their cheeseburgers and pizzas and buffalo wings, boy, within 48 hours, everything comes back. The blood pressure goes back up, the joints get inflamed, the skin erupts. The water-only fast needs to be a jumping-off platform to get into a whole food plant-based diet. Okay, and while they're fasting, we give them cooking classes and food demonstrations and videos. We want them so when they leave, when they walk into their kitchen at home, they know they're going to be eating soups and salads and veggies and a whole food plant-based diet. And by the way, it's not cruel and unusual punishment to go to a cooking class while you're doing a water fast.
I was thinking that exact thing.
Because by day 3, hunger is gone. The ketones suppress hunger. It's God's gift to fasters. You don't spend 21 days hungry. By day 3, not only are most of these folks not hungry, but all the energy that would normally be used to digest their food is freed up because they're not digesting food. And they feel it in their bodies. I had patients would stop me in the courtyard at the clinic. Doc, I feel great. I haven't felt this good in 30 years. I haven't eaten in 3 weeks, but I feel wonderful. It's counterintuitive. You think they're all going to be weak and tired and cold and whimpering on the bed. And the truth is they're not hungry. They feel balanced and good. It's a remarkable state. Some of them go through a detox. They go through a few days of nausea and muscle ache. Some of them, not many, but some will go through a detox. But once they go through that, they wind up in this lovely state. Some of them say, Doc, I don't want to start eating again. I feel so good. But if we get them to refeed on boiled zucchini chunks and vegetable soups and very light reintroduction into the world of eating. And with most of them, we're able to maintain the wonderful changes that they experience in a water fast. So therapeutic water fasting is a real thing, and it needs to be done right by people who know what they're doing. But it's not flaky quack therapies. Can people do a water fast at home? Yes. We spend all day, we eat all the time. We do not tolerate hunger. If you're at all hungry, you hit the fridge or you hit the restaurant. We don't tolerate hunger. But 1 day on water, 2 days on water, it often leaves you lighter and cleaner. Yeah, those are the toughest days there. As I mentioned, by day 3 or 4, the hunger's gone. So we have folks, if you're really into it, once a month, do a weekend on water only, or vegetable broth, which you can make or buy at the store. And then in a month or two, make it 3 days. And then after a month or two, 4 days, and just slowly build up 5 days as far as you want to go. But you can learn how to do water fasting safely at home. And there are articles and books on how to do that. And it would probably benefit us all. If all of us did 3-4 days on water once a month, I think we'd all be healthier for it. But again, it's the food in between the fast that really matters.
You mentioned that 5 days is kind of where we want to stop if we're doing it at home. Why would you not extend it to like 7 days or 10 days or something like that?
That's an important question. Because everybody's different, and if you're dealing with thousands or millions of people, there's going to be some folks who are a little on the fragile side. What happens is that no matter how much water you drink, blood pressures go down on a fast. And if they go down too far, people get out of bed and they get lightheaded, and worse than that, they pass out, they fall, and they break their face on the way down or when they hit, or some people start get nauseated, and they start vomiting. And that's the worst thing on a water fast. You're doing on a water fast, you can't keep water down, and you get dehydrated and electrolyte balances. The problems start coming up around day 5, 6, 7, 8. And again, it's good to have somebody around who knows what they're looking at and what's significant and what isn't. So it's to keep people out of trouble so they don't get into fainting and electrolyte imbalances, et cetera. So that's where it's an arbitrary 4 or 5 day cutoff, but we've learned that's about as far as you want to go unsupervised. I'm
gonna talk about something that might put a bit of people off, but I think it's really important. Stool. How does that work over your time? Like, are you still visiting the restroom? Like, how does that change? Is there something that could ring like alarm bells that is bad if something like that were to happen, that you feel a bit off?
Well, a very perceptive question. Good for you. People think that on a water fast, I'm not going to have any bowel movements. Well, we certainly find the opposite there. What happens? Well, first of all, the intestinal tract is 28 feet long, 22 feet of small intestine, 6 feet of colon. Nobody starts a water fast with a totally empty intestinal tract, even if you've had a colonic irrigation. There's still meals that are working their way through the intestinal tract, and they eventually get down to the colon, and you're going to have a bowel movement, and people do. And they're often surprised the volume that comes out, or right in the middle of on day 10, I had a bowel movement. Where'd that come from? And again, it's either just slowly moving food that's finally making it down to the colon, but also the intestine isn't totally inert during a water fast. The lining of the intestines are constantly sloughing intestinal lining cells. Mucus is being put into the intestinal tract. There's enzymes that are secreted by the wall of the intestine. These are proteins, and they all map together. There's bacteria in there, and this mucousy mat of proteins and bacteria and cells can form a stool mass, and that works its way down, and people will pass that. By the end of 10 days, 14, 21 days, you got a pretty empty colon, and your belly's pretty flat. But people do occasionally have bowel movements, and it's absolutely okay. And once we start eating, we want them by day 3 or 4. We want to make sure those bowels are moving again, and so we'll give them some prunes. If they haven't had a bowel movement themselves after 3-4 days, we'll give them some prunes and maybe some senna tea to help move things along a bit. But bowel function doesn't stop, but it certainly becomes more subdued on a water fast.
I love that. And obviously we're looking at a whole foods plant-based diet after the fast. What about that very first meal? Is that something that should be fruit because of the digestive enzymes in there? Should it be starchy? What's your take on that?
Oh, well, I really commend you. Those are very perceptive questions. I'm a pilot. I fly airplanes, and when you take an airplane off, you gain altitude gradually. And the same thing with starting your digestive system up here. You don't start with a big, heavy glop of tofu lasagna and baked potatoes as your first meal. Most folks aren't even that hungry to begin with. But no, we start off very light. As I mentioned, we'll take a zucchini squash. and cut it up into cubes and put it in a vegetable steamer and steam them up. And that's often the first meal, especially if it's been a long fast, more than 10 days. Less than 10 days, fruit works just fine. Watermelon chunks, cantaloupe chunks are before we get to that, the first thing we'll give, no matter if it's fruit or vegetables as part of the refeed, we usually start out with a nice tall glass of warm vegetable broth. It's got potassium, it's got minerals in it, but no mass and no sugars. It's a lovely thing to prime the intestinal tract with. Let it know, hey, there's food going to be going down. And you can make your own vegetable broth, or you can buy it off the shelf now at the grocery. So some warm vegetable broth is what we start with, and that gets things starting to move. Then up to 10 days, if the person really, boy, I've been dreaming of fruits, then absolutely, we'll give them watermelon chunks or other melons, cantaloupe, honeydew, and for 2 days. And then we'll move into steamed vegetables, the zucchini chunks, or broth-based soup with very well-steamed vegetables in it, very well-steamed greens and some celery, etc. But many folks, they don't want sweet is not pleasant to them. They're a little nauseated by it. And I don't want to get too scientific here, but if someone's been on a long fast and you give them a bunch of fruit sugar, it can drop their phosphate levels, called the Refeeding Syndrome, and people get really sick with that. It doesn't happen with the non-sugary foods. And so if someone's been on a 10, 14, 21-day fast, we don't give them fruit. We start with the zucchini chunks and move on to the vegetable broths and vegetable soups. But by day 4 or 5, they're eating rice and veggies, and by day 5, they're pretty much back to their normal intake. But we let the person be the guide. Some folks, they just want to eat the zucchini chunks and broth for a week. That's fine. But then they wake up, boy, I'm hungry. I could eat the doorknob, and then it's time to move on to the denser foods there. So everybody's different. You listen to the patients, the art of medicine. But that's generally how it's done. But light and watery at the beginning, whether it's fruit or vegetables, light and watery is the key.
All right. Now let's talk the days. So you have this set month. If someone, say, really wants to try out water fasting, is there like a difference, or maybe they've been doing it for a while, between like doing it for maybe 5 days a month, or like someone who maybe does it 1 day a week? Like, is there different studies or notice to say that doing 5 days a month and then eating for the rest is probably a bit more better off in terms of getting yourself into ketosis and healing the colon? Or is it 1 day a week to keep that consistency, or 2 days a week maybe?
A very perspicacious question there, very perceptive. There is a difference. Any time you spend fasting is a good thing. I mean, again, we eat all the time here, like our ancestors. And a 1 day fast is a lovely thing to do. You're going to get more of a therapeutic effect as you start linking days together, 2, 3, 4 days. But a 1 day fast once a week is absolutely fine. And then you get the various forms of what's called intermittent fasting, or more properly time-restricted feeding, where if you say have your light dinner, say at 6 p.m, then you don't eat for the rest of the evening and you go to bed. Well, now you're fasting. Well, 6 a.m, that's 12 hours. And normally, most people at 7 or 8 a.m, they go down and start shoveling food in their mouths. But during that time, you've done a fast, a 12-hour fast while you're sleeping. That's why the first meal is called break fast. You're breaking the fast. Well, during that time, you're starting to enter the real fasting state. You're starting to burn fats, etc. Many people are now in the fasting realm. They're saying, listen, You wake up in the morning in a fasting state. Keep that going for all the rest of the morning. Don't start eating till noon, and add another 6 hours in the fasting state every day. And that's called time restricted feeding. Come noon, start your salads and your soups, and from noon to 6, get all your eating in that 6 hour window, and then it comes 6 or 7 in the evening, you're done with food, and now time to go back into that fasting state for another 18 hours. So it's 18 hours of fasting, 6 hours of eating, and people get wonderful effects from that. And it's not disruptive to their workflow or their day. So, as far as exercise go, people, what's the best exercise? The one the patient will actually do. Well, it's the same thing with fasting. What's the best one? Whatever works for the person. We're all for it because you're going to get benefit regardless. And once you start with that time restricted feeding, you get your courage on. Well, gee, that wasn't so bad. I could go a full day, and that's how people get into a 1 day fast or a 2 day fast. So experiment. It's safe. It's benign. The only issue is that if you're on medicines, you can't stop. Medicines get potentiated on a fast, and they work more powerfully. And that can be dangerous. If you're on blood pressure pills, it'll drop your blood pressure too low.
Why is that? Why do they get more powerful?
Right. Oh, well, a little more science here. There's various theories, but most likely is that when you take a medicine, a vitamin, a supplement, anything, the molecules that you're taking do not float freely in the blood. They are immediately bound to a carrier protein like albumin or globulin. And most of these substances, medications as well, travel through the body bound to these carrier proteins. And only 1% in general will leap off their carrier molecule, do their effect, and come back on. This is just the pharmacokinetics of medications, et cetera. Well, ketones in your blood, they're slightly acidic. The blood doesn't ever turn acid; it's always alkaline. But it's a little one notch to the acid side in your bloodstream. Well, that's enough to change the binding characteristics of the proteins there, so things don't bind so tight. And instead of 1% free drug, now you got 3% free drug, 5% free drug in your bloodstream that are active. And we've learned the hard way. The medications that lower blood sugar, who don't do a water fast while you're taking metformin or glipizide, blood sugars drop too low. Don't do a water fast on beta blockers or ACE inhibitors. You'll drop your blood pressure too low. So in general, again, this is why you need medical supervision for longer fasts. But if you can't, stop all medications for a day or two. Most people aren't going to get in any trouble with that. But if you're on medicines, you can't stop. If you are on prednisone, you're on a psychiatric drug, an SSRI, and it's not safe to stop it, then you don't do a water fast. What you do is a juice cleanse, a nice glass of green vegetable juice with a little bit of carrot or apple in there so it doesn't taste like lawn clippings. That's a lovely thing to do for a day. Just sip green juices all day. You'll get most of the benefit of a water fast with that, but you don't have to stop the medications. You don't go into ketosis. It's a safer thing to do. So folks who are on medicines they can't stop, they should do a juice cleanse. And I use the word cleanse. It's not really a fast because they don't go into ketosis. It's a 600-calorie liquid diet, really. But it's so good. It's such a cleansing thing to do. A day or two on juices is a wonderful thing, and most everybody can do that safely. So that's how we play that one out.
I love it. So I know a lot of people listening to this pod, including myself, we're athletes. We like working out. We like staying healthy, runners, people in the gym. I can see you work out, obviously. So when we're looking at doing like maybe a 3 or 4 or 5 day fast, or even that 1 day fast, what's the take on doing a workout on that day? Or is it better to go work out just before the fast? Can you work out during like a 3 or 4 or 5 day fast? How does that affect your body?
Boy, you are a marksman with your questions here. That is such a key point. And in your question, you had a lot of the answer there. Do not do aerobic exercise on a water fast. Why? Because you will burn blood sugar down to your boots. The only time we've had anyone go hypoglycemic, severely so, he went out for a 3-mile walk, and there's hills around the clinic there. And he came back and he was talking computer code. He's a computer programmer, and he was talking computer code. His blood sugar was so low. It's dangerous to do an aerobic exercise on a fast. During a water fast, there's no time for exercise. You can do a little yoga, a little flexibility. That's fine. Maybe take a little walk. That's it. Save the aerobics for before the fast or after the fast. During the fast, it's a nice time. You don't lay in bed, but it's a nice time to catch up on your reading, listen to some podcasts, and balance your checkbook. But do not be doing strenuous workouts on a water fast. It's not safe to do that. So thank you for that. And if it's a long fast, if it's a 10 or 14-day fast, it's amazing how quickly you get deconditioned. We've had folks do 30-day fasts, and I said, don't schedule a workout with your personal trainer when you leave here. Expect walking up the flight of stairs, you're going to get winded. So again, like that airplane taking off, slowly rebuild your conditioning. It comes back, and someone your age, it'll come back pretty quickly. But that first workout, explore, see what kind of conditioning you still have left. It can really put a dent in your endurance there.
Is this something that athletes or people who want to enhance their performance, does fasting have a long-standing beneficial effect on them?
It probably does. Another great question. That echoes to the phenomenon of carb loading, in that our muscles, when you go for a run, you're not really burning the breakfast that you ate. What you're burning is the stored sugar, the glycogen in your muscles that came from the potatoes you ate 2 days ago. And it's the glycogen that's the stored sugar that really fuels your muscles for the run or the row or whatever you're doing. And so the classic maneuver with the carb loading is that for a day or two before the event, they either fast or they eat very low calorie or eat a high fat meal and burn down the glycogen stores. And then the night before the marathon, they eat all sorts of rice and pasta and load up those muscle fibers with glycogen. So you've got that extra reserve in the tank there. Well, in a way, the water fast kind of does that. It depletes your muscle glycogen on a water fast. And that's one reason why people find themselves so flummoxed when they try and walk up a hill or go for a run after a water fast, because they've depleted their muscle glycogen. But it does come back, and again, after the day or two on veggies or whatever, if they start the pastas and the carbohydrates, they'll load up those muscles. In a way, it's kind of a modified carbo loading program there. So the short answer is yes, it can help athletes, but don't do it immediately before a race. Do it the 10 days before, do it 2 weeks before if you want to do a fast. Don't do it immediately in the proximity of the aerobic event.
What if we're looking at all right, Sunday's a nice, easy end of week. I want to fast, do a water fast that whole Sunday. Would it be then safe, because you mentioned 2 days is the carb loading, so you wouldn't get fully depleted glycogen stores. So would it be safe to then go for a run or a workout on the Monday, like a day after one day fast?
After a fast, no. Try it, but don't be surprised if after a couple of blocks, oh man, my legs feel like lead, because you've depleted the muscle glycogen and not repleted it yet. Someone said treat your body after a fast like a vintage car, a 57 Chevy. You're at the stoplight, it turns green. You don't slam the accelerator down and screech away. it's an old car, easy does it, and accelerate gradually. Well, same thing after a water fast. Give yourself a day or two to replete your glycogen and get those nerves firing because you've taken it, rested during the day. Easy does it as you go through life. It lasts a lot longer that way. I turned 74 this year, and I've learned to be gentler with my body as I get older. But I feel like I was 40. I don't feel much different. It's been a very gentle aging, and I'm 100% sure the whole food plant-based diet is 90% of it, and not stressing over small stuff is the other 10%.
I love it. So you mentioned, all right, so 74, happy birthday, and many more years to come.
Thank you.
You've been in the plant-based space, like you mentioned, for like 30 years or over. And then, a lot has happened since you first discovered the power of plant-based, especially, given Gen Y and millennials and Gen Z that are now a lot more conscious of their health, and a lot of science has come out since then to really back the plant-based diet. And we have the data to say, hey, it's probably a good move for you to make. What's something that you're expecting, or what science would you love to see come out in the next few months, years, or decades?
Oh my! If I had my wish list, I don't expect it to come out. But what I would love someone to do is establish a registry of people who've been raised as vegans since birth, who've never tasted meat. Not a taste, but who've never been exposed to animal muscle going through their tissue. Do they develop lupus? Do they develop autoimmune diseases? Do they develop cancers? What happens to these folks? I know there's a lot of them. I know a lot of young parents who are vegan or raising their kids as vegan. I'd love to know what's happening to them when they're teens and their 20s or 30s, et cetera. That would be a wonderful study to see done. Studies on vegan athletes. There's going to be more and more of them. If your listeners have not, your viewers have not seen a film called The Game Changers, see that film. You'll see these magnificent athletes who fuel their bodies on plant-based diets, doing these wonderful athletic feats. I'd like to bring them into the lab and really document what's happening to them in their muscles, et cetera. I'd also like the study, which is quite doable, is check the microbiome as people become vegan. Check get a stool sample while they're still eating meat and dairy. And then as they adopt a plant-based diet, check their, every 2 days, get a little stool specimen, see what's happening in their gut, and see in turn what's happening with the rest of their organs. Check their hormone levels, check their cardiac function, check their emotional and mental states. Are they happy or are they depressed? What's happening? To really document the changes of what's happening in the body as people adopt the whole food plant-based diet, so we can optimize the beneficial changes and minimize any problems with that. So there's a whole world of exploration in plant-based physiology that needs to be done. And any of your young scientists out there who, if you've got freedom and a grant, study people living on plant-based diets. There are rich trove of physiology information that we need to know about.
I love it. And look, we've been talking about a plant-based diet quite a fair bit today. So in today's day and age, you've got a lot of accepted, well-known diets. You've got the keto, the carnivore, the DASH diet. You've got a myriad of different theories or all of that. Why do you think it's so hard to say this one diet is the one to rule them all?
Right. There's a huge inertia. People like the taste of steak in their mouth. They love biting into that burger. There's a whole cultural issue. There are social issues. If you deviate from that, then you're one of those nuts and berry wackos over there. And what are my family going to say? What are my friends going to say? There's huge social pressures to just keep on eating the standard Western diet. So that's certainly an issue. Like Dr. McDougall says, people love to hear good news about bad habits. And studies come out showing that when people adopt a paleo diet or a keto diet, they initially do quite good, and they lose weight, and because they're not eating the dairy and the oils and the flour products, and you stop dairy, oil, and pastries, and you're going to lose weight. And the weight loss itself will lower your cholesterol level. It will make your diabetes better, lower your blood pressure, and they get these improvements. And, hey, it's the best diet. See, science says it's the best diet, and I get to keep eating all my bacon and steaks and burgers. So and so that's why it keeps rolling on. As a physician, I say, yeah, what are you brewing up in these people's colons here? Are you packing their intestines full of meat 3 times a day? Are you setting these people up for an epidemic of colon cancer? What are you doing to the arteries in their brain? You're setting these people up for dementia? What are you doing to the bacteria that live in their gut wall? You're going to set them up for colitis and Crohn's disease? Yeah, looking at the long term, I say, don't be seduced by these early changes. I think you're brewing up some terrible diseases in these people's bodies, and they're going to become evident. There's already studies in the literature showing that people eat paleo diets have higher levels of TMAO, a molecule that damages the arteries. So what you're seeing is the merchandising and the social inertia that keeps the meat diet going, and these studies coming out, lowers blood pressure, lowers your cholesterol level, and therefore it's great. So that's the confusion that filters to you and members of the public. But us plant-based docs are sitting back saying, yeah, but when's the other shoe going to drop here? Because we are not carnivorous apes. That's not who we are. And when we eat a flesh-based diet, we spawn diseases in our gut, in our arteries, and in our systems. And no matter how good that steak may taste, and that changes by there comes a point where you don't even want to eat the stuff. Currently, if you were raised with that, that's the food your mother gave you. It's a comfort food that we like to keep eating. But everything needs to change. We used to do lots of things that we don't do anymore, and a flesh-based diet is one of those.
Maybe it's something you can add to your studies wish list. Instead of following the plant-based people, why don't you go the other way? You don't see a 74-year-old carnivore diet fellow human. It's something we can follow. People who follow carnivore diet over the long term. I'd be curious as to the effects of what TMO would cause up on the LDL buildup and all of that. But based on that, I'm guessing I know your answer. But a lot of people, I think especially someone who maybe isn't versed very well in the science promoting a plant-based diet and doesn't know how to read the data, which, look, I'm someone who's new to reading that, and it gets a little bit confusing, especially when you have conflicts of interest and you have to look into people and things like that. So I was wondering if you have a thought of, can we say with certainty or with some level of confidence at this stage and with the knowledge that we have, is a plant-based diet is like the one that is most likely to be the safest option for you, your children, your grandparents, and so forth?
Oh, the resounding yes. It is most, in the way you phrase it, it's most likely to be the best diet for all those generations of people, including those who want a livable planet, the grandchild who wants air to breathe and fertile soil and water that you can drink. It's definitely the best diet for them. But even on a physiologic level, yes. Now, do you have, what's I think behind the question is, do you have to be 100% vegan? What if you have a little bit of meat once a week? Is that terrible? Probably not. And you probably get a great advantage of that if the majority of what's going down your gullet is whole plant foods. And when we look around the blue zones, around the world where people live the longest, they're not pure vegans. In these villages in Italy and Okinawa, I'm sure they have a little fish, once a week or so. And fair enough. So I don't want to get caught up on the vegan orthodoxy here. Now, but as long as the majority of what goes on goes down your throat there are whole plant foods, you're going to be healthier than the folks eating a flesh-based diet with lots of processed food. No question about that. And so we can talk over a glass of herb tea as far as how much meat before it starts getting dangerous. But again, plant-based diets are clearly, and the medical literature, I think, is even the Mediterranean diet is predominantly plant-based. That's why it's so healthy. It's not the olive oil; it's all the vegetables in it, and what isn't there, and the meat that isn't there, the dairy that isn't there. That's why the Mediterranean diet is healthier. It's a plant-based diet, essentially.
This is a question I love to ask everyone, and I'm really curious as to your response. What is your definition of healthy, or what a healthy person looks like and embodies?
Oh my. A healthy person, just by measurement, they are within 3 to 5 kilos of their ideal body weight. And there are tables, depending how tall you are, will determine how much you should weigh. And with a few kilos of that, they're not too heavy, not too skinny. But then it's a matter of function. A healthy person can move without pain in their joints. They can walk up a hill without wheezing or shortness of breath. They pass one large soft stool pretty much every day, if not more than that. And their skin is not broken out with eruptions, and they have a positive frame of mind. And of course, with normal numbers, normal blood pressure, normal heart rate, normal blood sugars, etc. I'd call that person a healthy person, as long as their size and shape and numbers are correct and they're functioning optimally. Then, by definition, they're healthy.
I love it. And then when we look, a lot of people that see your name find familiarity in it. They've followed a vegan diet, or maybe are looking to follow one now. When we're looking at the particular diet part of things, what's something that maybe isn't discussed enough, or something like, I've been following a plant-based diet for 6 years, or so, I'm not even sure. So what's something I can add, or someone that's following that diet that maybe would take our health to the next level that you think isn't discussed enough, or something that you think is underrated?
Sure, very good. Two things. Eat more greens, okay? Seriously, we're talking about dark green leafy vegetable, chard, kale, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, asparagus. They are so filled with not only important minerals, that's where you get your magnesium, that's where you get your calcium, that's where you get potassium, but also the precursors for nitric oxide to keep your blood vessels nice and healthy and elastic. That's in the greens. And so every day you want at least one good mound of something dark and green, and twice a day is even better, one at lunch, one at dinner. The second is, like Dr. Furman says, the salad is the main dish. You can't live on everything cooked and processed and fried and overheated. You need that fresh, live produce every day, whether it's a big salad, preferably with a no oil dressing, and I have recipes for that on my website, or 3, 4, 5 pieces of fruit. Keep that live stuff going in. So more greens, and usually steam those lightly. You'll eat a lot more steamed kale than you will raw kale. So more greens and more fresh stuff. Those are the two best things anybody could do to tweak their diet upwards and benefit from it.
Awesome. I am conscious of the time, so I know we've got to finish up on the end side here. It's flown. I would love to, and this is something I love to end every conversation with, I'd love to give you the platform to talk about something that could be related to our conversation, or it could be something completely different that maybe you just like to bestow your wisdom upon us. So the stage is all yours, Dr. Klaper.
Everything makes a difference. Your body is never not looking. there's no fooling it. Your body knows what you eat. There's no telling your body, look over here and have a cheeseburger and a pizza there. No, what was that? Your bloodstream knows, your liver knows, your arteries know. Shakespeare said, to thine own self be true. Dr. Klaper says, thine own health be true, thine own arteries be true, thine own colon be true. So honor our anatomy. We are plant-eating hominid creatures. Eat whole plant foods. Honor the natural world where you fit in. But also, we're now seeing that the food we eat does not come from the store, doesn't even come from the farm. It comes from the natural world. And this outrageous, nonstop meat orgy that Homo sapiens as a species, all 8 billion of us have embarked upon, except the plant eaters, with this constant stream of bacon and burgers and chicken and fish. This is destroying not only our bodies, it's destroying the planet. And that's why every year on planet Earth, we cut the throats of 80 billion living creatures, cows, pigs, chickens, sheep. What right do we have to inflict death on such an industrial scale on these innocent creatures, which then come back to hurt us? They don't intend it, but the effect is that we wind up killing ourselves from this. Death begets death. Violence begets violence, and you eat death, and you wind up sowing it in your own body. You want everything you do to affirm life, to affirm love. Every word you say should make people feel better. And every meal you order in the restaurant should cause as little damage to other creatures as possible and the earth. So it does make a difference if you order the bean chili or the beef chili, and every time you order the plant-based option, the world's a little healthier. The air is a little cleaner, and the water is more pure, and there'll be a more livable world for the children. What right do we have to plunder their futures as well? So every meal makes a difference for your health and for the larger health. And if you love yourself and you love this world and you love animals and you love your life, become a plant-eating person and celebrate. You'll be rewarded with health. And when you put your head on the pillow at night, you'll do it with a clear conscience that you haven't intentionally caused damage to any living creature because of your desire for the taste of their bodies there. So make your life a statement of love and generosity, and you'll be rewarded with good health and happiness.
I love that. I think that really speaks to and gives us a window into who you are as a person. And it kind of flows really nicely in the end note I'd like to end with. But just before I get to that, for anyone who wants to find you, of course, I'll leave all the links below. So anyone listening that wants to connect with Dr. Klaper, you've got his website, drklaper.com. He's on Instagram at Dr. Klaper and Facebook as well at Michael Klaper, MD. Look, I'd like to say on behalf of myself as a human and on behalf of Plant Paradigm Community, thank you for all the work you do. I know that you've put in tremendous amount of hours and days and years into really promoting something that is vital for our survival and thrival as a society, as creatures of this planet. But also because of that, you've contributed greatly to the positive outcome of reducing the amount of greenhouse gases we have in the environment, but also sparing thousands of animals' lives by really recommending something that is, like you said, good for us, good for the planet, and good for animals. So from the bottom of my heart, I really appreciate your time to take that out of your day to speak with us today. But I also appreciate the many years you've put in before today's conversation to make a positive impact and really leave something with someone, and your words can really create such a positive impact. So I really appreciate that, and I'm grateful for you and your role in our lovely society. So thank you once again for your time, Dr. Michael Klaper.
You're most welcome. It's been an honor and a pleasure. Thank you for getting this word out to your viewers. Couldn't do anything more important with your time and energy as well. Thank you, and blessings of good health and happiness to you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there. Welcome to the end of the episode. Thank you for listening the whole way through. I really appreciate it. Thank you once again to Dr. Klaper for coming on and sharing this very insightful conversation. I feel that it'll add a lot of value to my life, and I hope that you felt that same way to yours. After having this conversation, I'm really motivated to try this water fasting. I'm going to start out with maybe like 3 or 4 days and work myself up to the 5-day mark that we're talking about, just as an experiment. I've done juice fasting in the past and haven't found too much benefit in my personal opinion, so I'm really curious about this water fasting thing. But if you've tried water fasting or plan on trying water fasting, let us know on Instagram at plant.paradigm. I want to hear your experiences, so I guess I'm not too scared to try it myself. But that is all from me today. Again, if you want to connect to Dr. Klaper, all the links are in the show notes below. Until next week, stay happy, eat plants, peace.